Have you ever spent 20 minutes carefully typing out a text message, perfectly structuring your logic, making sure you hit every single point with absolute clarity, only to receive a response that proves the other person didn't understand a single word you just said? Or maybe you have tried to use basic common sense to explain something to a co-worker, and you end up walking away feeling physically exhausted, as if your own brain just lost 50 IQ points. You probably went home that night, pacing around your kitchen, replaying the argument in your head, coming up with all the clever things you should have said. You probably thought that person was just impossible, or maybe you wondered if you simply didn't explain yourself well enough. But psychology tells us a much darker truth. The moment you tried to use reason to change their mind, you made a critical mistake. You fell right into a hidden psychological trap. And there is one specific, incredibly common word you probably used during that conversation that secretly guaranteed you were going to lose. I will tell you exactly what that word is and how to replace it in a few minutes. But first, we need to understand a frustrating reality. Why do smart people constantly lose battles against ignorant people? We are raised with a very specific illusion. We believe that intelligence is a universal shield and that life is basically a rational debate club. We think that if we have the facts, if we can articulate our thoughts clearly, and if we are objectively correct, we can navigate any situation and convince anyone of the truth. But when you collide with a truly irrational person, someone who refuses to see reality, who talks over you, or who is stubbornly confident in their own ignorance, your intelligence actually becomes your greatest weakness. To understand why this happens, we have to look at what is actually going on inside the brain of the person you are arguing with. In psychology, there is a very famous concept called the Dunning-Kruger effect. In simple English, it means that people with very low ability or very low knowledge in a certain area are completely unable to recognize their own lack of knowledge. They literally do not know enough to know how little they know. So, their brain does something fascinating to protect them. It substitutes real knowledge with absolute, unshakable confidence. Think about a time someone tried to aggressively explain your own job to you, or when a relative who has never studied finance tried to give you terrible, absolute advice on what to do with your money. To you, it feels absurd. You are trying to play a civilized game of chess. You have studied the strategies, you know how every piece moves, and you are playing by the rules. The person sitting across from you is acting like a pigeon. They knock over the pieces, they go to the bathroom on the board, and then they strut around as if they won the game. As an intelligent person, you sit there staring at the board, trying to explain the rules to the pigeon. You say, "You can't move that way. That is not how the knight works." And the pigeon just stares blankly, knocks over your king, and feels victorious. Why does this exhaust you so deeply? It drains your energy because you are operating under the illusion that the other person cares about the truth. You are trying to use a logical map to navigate a city that the other person doesn't even live in, and it actually gets worse. Psychological research has uncovered something called the backfire effect. Scientists have observed that when you show an irrational person actual proof that they are wrong, they do not change their mind. Instead, their brain perceives the conflicting evidence as a personal attack. They actually double down and become even more stubbornly committed to their false belief. You have probably experienced this in real life. You are arguing with someone, and they make a ridiculous claim. You pull out your phone, you open Google, you find the exact research paper or article that proves them completely wrong, and you hand them the phone. What do? Do they say, "Wow, I was wrong, thank you for showing me"? No. They glance at it, roll their eyes and say, "Well, you can't trust everything on the internet," or "Those studies are biased." You gave them the absolute truth, and they just brushed it away. The famous philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster." And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. When you argue with someone who lacks self-awareness, you are gazing into the abyss. And the longer you try to force them to understand, the more you start to act like them. Think about how you feel physically in those moments. You raise your voice, your heart rate spikes, your chest tightens. You become defensive and petty. The intelligent, rational person eventually becomes irrational and foolish, just trying to combat the foolishness. You end up with an emotional hangover that lasts for days, while the other person sleeps perfectly fine. But let's pause and ask a very uncomfortable question. Why do we do it? If it makes us so tired, why is it so incredibly hard for us to just walk away? This brings us to the deepest and most hidden truth about highly intelligent people. We don't argue with ignorant people just to be helpful teachers. We do it because of our own ego. The great analytical psychologist Carl Jung talked extensively about something called the shadow. The shadow is the part of our subconscious mind that holds our hidden fears, our insecurities, and our unacknowledged desires. Jung believed that the things that trigger us the most in other people are actually direct reflections of our own unresolved inner conflicts. Think about the last time you argued with a stubborn uncle at a family holiday, or a difficult co-worker. Remember how hot your face felt? You weren't just angry because they were factually wrong. You were angry because their ignorance made you feel unseen, unheard, and powerless. Intelligent people have a deep subconscious need to be understood. Because your mind is your greatest asset, you have relied on your intellect your entire life to feel safe, to succeed, and to navigate the world. When someone casually dismisses your logic, your brain interprets it not just as a disagreement, but as a threat to your survival. Your subconscious screams, "If my intelligence doesn't work here, I am not safe." So, you argue with the fool not to save them, but to validate yourself. You desperately want them to look at you, realize your brilliance, and say, "Oh, I see now. You are right, and I am wrong." You want to fix their broken logic so you can feel secure again. But I want you to sit with a question for a moment. Why do you need the validation of a fool to know that you are smart? Why do you need a blind person to confirm that the sky is blue? If you truly know your own worth, the misunderstanding of an ignorant person shouldn't shake your foundation. Let's shift gears and look at this differently. Imagine you are holding a clear glass of water, but someone scoops up some mud and drops it in. The dirt swirls around, making the water dark, chaotic, and impossible to drink. If you stick your hand into the glass and try to manually push the dirt down to the bottom to force the water to be clear, what happens? You just stir it up more. The friction of your hand makes the water muddier. The only way to make the water clear is to set the glass down, step back, and leave it completely alone. Over time, gravity does the work. The dirt settles to the bottom, and the water becomes clear all by itself. This is the exact psychological blueprint for dealing with irrational people. You cannot force clarity into a chaotic mind by adding your own frustrated energy to it. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius understood this better than anyone. He was one of the most powerful men in the history of the world. He was a philosopher, a brilliant thinker, and a master of Stoicism. Because he was the emperor, he didn't just deal with a few annoying co-workers. He was surrounded by backstabbers, sycophants, corrupt politicians, and completely irrational citizens every single day. If he let their stupidity bother him, he would have lost his mind or his empire. So he developed a psychological armor. Every single morning before he left his bed, he would say to himself, "Today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." He didn't wake up hoping that everyone would magically act logically. He actively expected them to be ridiculous. This is a psychological concept we call radical acceptance. Radical acceptance means you stop fighting reality. If it starts raining while you're walking outside, you don't look up at the sky and start yelling at the clouds for being illogical. You accept that it is raining and you open an umbrella. When a dog barks at you, you don't get angry at the dog for not speaking proper English. You accept that it is a dog, and barking is what dogs do. When an irrational person acts irrationally, you must stop being shocked by it. You must stop expecting a pigeon to play chess. When you encounter someone who is fiercely committed to misunderstanding you, you have to realize that their behavior is their karma, not yours. How you respond to them is your karma. So how do intelligent people actually respond in the real world? How do you handle the arrogant boss, the toxic family member, or the loud stranger on the internet without giving away your peace of mind? First, you have to completely change your goal. The goal of an amateur in life is to win the argument. The goal of a master is to preserve their energy. When you are faced with a foolish person, you stop using logic and you start using a psychological tool called tactical empathy. This does not mean you agree with their crazy ideas. It means you acknowledge their emotions so you can shut down the emotional engine that is driving their argument. Irrational people are usually highly emotional. They actually crave conflict because making you upset gives them a sense of power. If you push back with facts, you give them the exact fuel they want. Instead, you step to the side and let them fall over their own momentum. Remember earlier when I told you there is one specific word you must never use when dealing with an impossible person? That word is but. Think about how often you use it. I hear what you're saying, but... That's a good point, but the facts show. I appreciate your input, but we have to do it this way. In human psychology, the word but acts as a tripwire. It instantly triggers the amygdala, which is the primitive fear and defense center of the brain. When a stubborn person hears the word but, their brain instantly erases everything nice you said before it, and they prepare for war. They know a counterattack is coming, so they stop listening and start loading their weapons. Highly intelligent people, when dealing with ignorant people, completely remove the word but from their vocabulary. They use the word and, or they use the most powerful weapon of all, silence. Let's look at a highly relatable, practical situation. Imagine a coworker comes up to your desk or sends you a passive-aggressive message, confidently telling you that your way of doing a project is completely wrong, even though you have done it successfully 100 times, and they have no idea what they are talking about. If you respond by saying, "I understand why you think that, but the data shows my way works," they will interrupt you immediately. The argument begins, your heart rate goes up, and your afternoon is ruined. Instead, try this. Look at them calmly. Let a slightly uncomfortable 2-second silence pass and say, "You might be right. I will take that into consideration." You might be right. These 4 words are a psychological magic spell that instantly neutralizes a foolish person. Look closely at what you are actually saying. You haven't agreed that they are right. You just acknowledged the philosophical possibility that they might be somewhere in an alternate universe. By saying, "I will take that into consideration," you haven't promised to change anything. You have simply validated their need to be heard, while completely removing all the friction. There is a wall they are trying to push against, and you just turn that wall into thin air. They will usually pause, nod, feel a false sense of victory, and walk away. And you go right back to doing exactly what you know is correct, with your peace and your energy completely intact. You didn't lose. You protected your most valuable asset, your focus. There is another incredible technique born from this same psychology called the gray rock method. This is especially useful for dealing with people who are narcissistic or chronically dramatic. The idea is to make yourself as uninteresting and unresponsive as a grey rock on the ground. When they come to you with gossip or ridiculous accusations or wild conspiracy theories, you do not show shock, you do not show anger, and you do not try to correct them. You give them nothing but flat, boring responses. Wow, that's interesting. Eventually, because they cannot extract an emotional reaction from you, they get bored and look for someone else to bother. A fire cannot burn in a vacuum. You are simply removing the oxygen. Now, letting someone believe they are right when they are completely painfully wrong is incredibly difficult for a highly intelligent person. It feels like a betrayal of the truth. It feels like you are letting them get away with it. But this is where you must elevate your perspective. You have to look in the mirror and ask yourself, what is my actual priority in life? Is my priority to be the universal teacher of all ignorant people? Am I the appointed judge of the universe, tasked with fixing every wrong opinion? Or is my priority to live a peaceful, focused, healthy, and meaningful life? You cannot save people from their own minds. Some people are meant to stay in the dark, and they are comfortable there. It is not your job to carry a heavy flashlight for someone who enjoys having their eyes closed. As you start practicing this, as you drop the word but, as you use the 4 magic words, you might be right. And as you practice being a grey rock, you will notice a profound, almost magical shift in how your physical body feels. In the past, dealing with a difficult person would leave your stomach in knots. You would carry their negative energy home to your family. You were letting them live rent-free in your mind, allowing someone you don't even respect to dictate your emotional state. But as you start practicing radical acceptance and tactical silence, something beautiful happens inside you. You will be sitting across from someone. You will watch them get loud. You will watch them get arrogant. And instead of feeling threatened, you will feel a deep, quiet stillness inside of yourself. You will look at them, not with anger, but with a mild, objective curiosity, like a scientist quietly observing a strange, noisy bug in a glass jar. You will suddenly realize that their noise has absolutely nothing to do with you. Their anger, their stubbornness, and their stupidity is just a heavy, dirty backpack that they are forcing themselves to carry through life. And the most liberating realization you will ever have is that you do not have to pick up their backpack. You don't have to try to take it off their shoulders. You don't even have to point out that it's heavy. You just smile, nod, and keep walking freely on your own path. The ultimate sign of true intelligence isn't having the perfect comeback to win an argument against a fool. It is recognizing that their ignorance was never a threat to your reality in the first place. A fact answers a question, but this realization changes how you live your life. You do not beat a foolish person by being louder, smarter, or more articulate. You beat them by remaining completely untouched. If this realization brought you a sense of relief, it means you are finally ready to take your energy back from the people who have been draining it. But dealing with difficult people is only one side of the coin. The other side is stopping the internal habits and the overthinking that drain your peace from the inside out. If you want to master your own mind, detach from the need for external validation and stop overanalyzing every interaction you have. Subscribe to the channel right now. In our next video, we will dive deep into the psychology of how to completely break the cycle of self-doubt and build a mindset that makes you truly untouchable in a chaotic world. Take a deep breath, let the muddy water settle, and keep your peace intact.